Hi.
Hello. Acts chapter 2, we find the apostles and at least 108 other people in the upper room in Jerusalem in obedience to Christ, waiting for the power from on high to arrive. We don't have a clear indication they thought it would happen on Pentecost, but on Pentecost Day they're assembled together. So we should probably talk about the Jewish significance of Pentecost.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's the 50th day from the Passover, and so on the Jewish calendar that has significance, and it's the festival of the first fruits, first fruits of the harvest, certain harvest.
So I must admit something kind of embarrassing, I guess, in that as a witness, Pentecost only meant this to me. So it was almost like I had already thrown out all the Old Testament stuff. I didn't think of it in terms of it being Jewish, a Jewish holiday, a significant time for the Jews.
Did you link it to first fruits?
I only linked it to this happened on Pentecost. I don't know. I just didn't give any significance to Pentecost, which is a little embarrassing now, but.
Well, we're going to see that metaphor of the first fruits is applicable to this, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whether they knew it in advance or not that this would happen, we don't know for sure, but there's no indication they did. But it does mean the 50th day from the Passover. And so calendar-wise it has significance. And you forget that we've already discussed the 40 days wait while they fellowship with Jesus after his resurrection and then his ascension. So it's following the calendar even back to the death of Christ and his resurrection. We often forget that the Jews were concerned to get the execution of Christ out of the way before Passover occurred.
Right.
And so Christ was dead on the holiday, and we forget too the day after, the Sabbath, which our Saturday, Christ is in the grave resting.
Yeah, so he's keeping the Sabbath even in death.
Keeping the Sabbath even in death. And then rises on the 8th day, which of course is the first day of the next week.
And that's why there's the significance in the early church of both days. Saturday and Sunday is significant to them.
So let us read the first 13 verses where the Pentecost experience is related for the only time in the Bible.
Okay. Now while the day of the festival of Pentecost was in progress, they were all together at the same place. And suddenly there occurred from heaven a noise just like that of a rushing stiff breeze, and it filled the whole house in which they were sitting. And tongues as if of fire became visible to them, and were distributed about, and one sat upon each one of them. And they all became filled with Holy Spirit, and started to speak with different tongues, just as the Spirit was granting them to make utterance. As it was, there were dwelling in Jerusalem Jews, reverent men, from every nation of those under heaven. So when this sound occurred, the multitude came together, and were bewildered, because each one heard them speaking in his own language. Indeed, they were astonished, and began to wonder, and say, "See here, all these who are speaking are Galileans, are they not? And yet how is it we are hearing each one of us his own language in which we were born? Parthians and Medes and Elamites and the inhabitants of Mesopotamia and Judea and Cappadocia, Pontus and the district of Asia, and Phrygia and Pamphylia, Egypt and the parts of Libya, which is toward Cyrene, and sojourners from Rome, both Jews and proselytes, Cretans and Arabians. We hear them speaking in our tongues about the magnificent things of God." Yes, they were all astonished and were in perplexity, saying one to another, "How does this thing purport to be?" Or "What does this thing purport to be?" However, different ones mocked at them and began to say, "They are full of sweet wine."
We forget the the metaphors here, the Jews would have immediately connected, whether subconsciously or consciously. First of all, the land, the Jubilee, 50. 50 is the number for the Jubilee, and that's when all land returns to the owners. Then there's the metaphor of the festival. It's the festival of first fruits. It's when the first harvests of the year are reaped. And so the appropriateness of the timing of this, whether they knew it in advance or not, but also the diaspora. Then you have a list of the diaspora, which is literally in Greek the casting out or the scattering of the Jews throughout the world. And the word is not Jews, it's diaspora, spore, seed. They are already, the seeds of Judaism in the Old Testament are cast throughout the world by, of course, the exile. They never came back from the exile. Most Jews still live in exile. And here you have a list of the places they live. These were devout Jews, it says, from all over the Roman Empire.
And verse 5 says that they are in Jerusalem now, and it's because they are devout men. It is because in the New World it says reverent men. These are like serious Jews. They're serious about their faith. And so they go back to Jerusalem for the Pentecost.
Yeah.
And so it seems appropriate they would be first fruits to spread the message that they are now aware of because of what's happening here.
They are here to worship, of course, at the temple at the high Jewish festival. So they've been here for maybe 2 months already, preparing for both the Passover and now Pentecost, and then likely go back home, unless they have business in the area. But if they go back home, they go back home not to another temple, but to their synagogues all over the Jewish Empire.
And they go back with news, with something new, with the fulfillment of what they've always been promised. The Messiah has come. The Messiah lives.
So we often think that this took years, this process of the gospel going from Jerusalem to Judea to Samaria, and then going to the Gentiles a few years after that. And we think of Cornelius, of course, first in Acts 10. But we forget this. The gospel's already gone out.
The pre-work, really.
The preparation of the synagogues right across the Roman Empire with some knowledge of this Jesus, who in the next segment of Acts 2, Peter is going to be preaching with the 11 about the significance of Pentecost and what came before Pentecost.
So we talked about the fact that the timing of this is significant. Why does this all happen on the Jewish calendar? Like it happens so that, that these people would be there, so that they would spread the message. So this is, I think this is very significant, and I would have just read right past it and missed all the Jewishness of it.
Yeah.
And why it would happen this way, and why would Christ come exactly at that time, and why would he die at that time?
Yeah. We would have missed all of it. Peter's sermon at Pentecost. What does Peter, with the 12, that is with the other 11 of the 12, what does he do with this event? How does he explain it and unpack it for this very mixed audience of devout Jews who are making a pilgrimage to Jerusalem at this specific time? In the next segment.